Did this guy just crawl out of a prison camp, or what? That's what the cops said, right before he tossed a chair toward the defendant like he was shoving out the garbage. The whole courtroom cracked up, laughing at the man who, for all they knew, didn't even have a name or a lawyer. And when the defendant refused to speak, the cop grinned and ordered the cuffs. Because that's what you do when you think you've got all the power in the room, right? Only, what nobody expected was for the black man to reach into his coat, pull out a badge, and lay it on the table for all to see. Director, FBI. The laughter dried up so fast it could have cracked the walls. I'm telling you, I was there, and you could feel it. That shift, like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Justice used to be a punchline. But in that moment, it was staring dead into the eyes of everyone who ever thought they could laugh their way through the truth. It was Monday, damp and sticky in the courthouse, the kind of air that clings to your skin and makes the stale coffee smell even worse. The seats were half full. Clerks, some rookie interns, a handful of cops sitting together in a little pack. Everything about the place said routine, just another small-time trial. Nothing to see here. Then the side door blew open. 2 security guards strode in first, dead serious, like they were escorting a murderer. Between them, the defendant. No handcuffs, but so closely flanked it was like they expected him to explode. His shirt was a mess, collar stained with what looked like old blood, and yet his eyes, when you caught them, were stone. Calm. Not mad, not pleading, just cold, like steel left out overnight. He didn't glance at anybody. Didn't even blink when a woman in the front row let out a little gasp of pity. The guard sat him down at the defense table and stepped back. Nobody in the place moved for a few heartbeats. Somebody coughed. A chair creaked, like everyone was trying to fill up the weird silence that suddenly sucked the room dry. He just sat there, straight-backed, staring at the empty judge's bench. Nobody knew his name. No lawyer sat beside him. No family in the hall. It was like he'd materialized out of thin air, nothing but a man-shaped blank space. And even the court clerk seemed rattled, checking his file twice, her brow furrowed deep. No address, no job, no history, nothing. She mumbled something under her breath and shot a worried look at the tech team. Then the judge came in, a white guy, middle-aged, nose red from allergies, moving stiff from too many years in the same chair. He scanned the file, looked up, then backed down, spun his pen in his fingers, and tapped the mic. Trials in session. Nobody said a word. 5 seconds of pure, awkward silence. Then a kid's voice cut through everything, clear as day. Is he a bad guy, Mom? Everybody turned. Little boy, maybe 5, curly hair, wide eyes, tugging on his mom's sleeve and pointing at the defendant. The mom blushed, yanked him close, but the question just hung there. That was all the spark the cops in the back needed. One snorted. Another burst out. If you can't see the problem on his face, you need an eye exam. Laughter bubbled up, not all at once, but growing. Some people nodding, some slapping their thighs, others grinning like they'd just found the day's entertainment. But the man at the center of it all, he didn't so much as twitch. No embarrassment, no answer for the kid, no reaction to the jeers. His eyes never left that invisible spot straight ahead. That, somehow, made it worse, like people didn't know what to do with a man who just wouldn't break. Innocent folks usually protest. Guilty ones shrink away. But this guy just sat there, like someone who'd long since gotten used to being the punchline. The judge tried to get control back, cleared his throat, asked for the defendant's name. Nothing. Clerk leaned in. No name in the file. The judge tried again. No answer. You have no lawyer? A single slow nod. You want to represent yourself? Another nod. Anything to say before I read the charges? The man looked up, met the judge's eyes, 3 seconds flat, then looked away. It spooked the judge so bad, he actually leaned back in his chair, like something unseen just brushed past him. Nobody said it out loud, but you could feel the tension crawling up the walls. And then came the performance. That's what it was, a show, not a trial. The crowd started recording on their phones, sending clips around. Live at the courthouse. Got your popcorn? You could almost hear the emails, the texts, zipping through every group chat in the building. They didn't know the joke was on them. They thought they were the audience, but they were the cast. The trial wasn't for the man sitting alone. It was for everyone else to show their true faces. The officer on duty, the same one who'd shoved the chair, couldn't resist taking his turn at the mic. You folks always cry about justice and human rights until you land here. then you beg for mercy. Hilarious. Nobody argued. Laughter, thin and cruel, followed. Maybe this guy thinks he's Denzel Washington, someone muttered. The room held, but still the defendant never moved, never flinched. The more they tried to pull a reaction out of him, the tighter the room seemed to get. So one cop, just itching for an audience, pulled up a bodycam video on his phone. Grainy, jerky footage, cops screaming, "He's resisting! Resisting!" The man on the ground, arms out. A blow. The screen went black. "That's it?" someone asked. "Corrupted file," said the cop, grinning. Another officer muttered, "Yeah, corrupted just means edited." Laughter again. No one cared. A clerk pulled out her own phone, queued up a TikTok clip. Same man, walking into the courtroom, blood-stained collar. She slapped on a filter, cheesy music, "This morning's black show." She called it, and half the room lost it. Whistles, applause, people filming. Even the staff, even the judge's own people, joined in. In a corner, an older cop, arms crossed, just watched. When asked if he felt sorry for the guy, he shrugged. "I'm just wondering how long he can take it." He could take it, all right. Not because he was immune, but because every insult, every mockery, just bounced off him, like he was made of some material the rest of them would never understand. The judge tried to go back to business, but when they played the official footage, the same corruption appeared. Black screen, error code. Another round of laughter, another joke at the defendant's expense. But what none of them noticed was that their laughter was slowly turning sour, like milk left out too long. Because the man never gave them what they wanted. No shouting, no pleading, no breakdown. His silence started to eat at them. When the judge offered him a court-appointed attorney, he shook his head, said 4 words, "I will represent myself." That's all. The sound of his voice, calm, unbothered, landed heavy, like a casket lid slamming shut. Now here's where it got strange. Midway through the circus, a woman walked in, plain gray blouse, beige shoes, hair pinned back. She went straight to the defendant, flashed a blue federal liaison card at security, and dropped a white envelope in front of him. Didn't say a word, just walked out. Nobody knew who she was, but the air in the room changed. He opened the envelope, one handwritten line, "Prepared." He folded it back up, set it on the table. It was as if he'd just received his orders, and suddenly, he wasn't just some nobody anymore. When the judge asked, "Can you state your previous occupation?" the man replied, "Former federal investigation work." That was it. The whole room went icy. A young cop cracked a joke. "If you're FBI, I'm the Pope." But nobody really laughed. At the back of the courtroom, the tech team tried to pull up his file. Access denied. Code G44. That's the kind of code they reserve for secrets nobody's supposed to even know exist. That's when things started to slide out of the court's hands. The police chief himself came in, flanked by 2 men in black suits, sunglasses on indoors, federal muscle, the kind that never says a word unless they're reading your rights. They didn't speak, didn't sit, just stood behind the defendant. Someone tried to ask what was happening, but the question died in their throat. All of a sudden, everything changed. Not with sirens or shouts, but with a silence so deep it made your bones ache. That's when the defendant calmly opened his briefcase and pulled out the badge, silver, blue, eagle insignia, the real deal. Elijah Ford, Director, FBI. You should have seen their faces, the same cops who were laughing, the judge who thought he was in charge, all of them frozen, the truth slapping them harder than any gavel could. Ford just looked around, not angry, not triumphant, just coldly indifferent. And then, finally, he spoke, just once. "You should have stayed as silent as I did." No grand speech, no call for justice. Just a mirror, and everyone in the room saw their own ugliness staring back. After that, nobody moved. Not a breath, not a cough. It was like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Ford stood up and left the courtroom, alone, without looking back, while the whole system he'd exposed sat shivering in their own shame. But you know what? That wasn't the end. That was just the start. News spread like wildfire. The FBI moved in, files seized, systems locked down, the police chief's own keycard deactivated. Social media blew up with clips, memes, a million hot takes. But underneath it all, you could feel it, the ground shifting. Old power structures dissolving. People getting erased from the system, not fired, but just gone. Like they never existed. There were no gunshots, No dramatic showdowns. Just emails that never sent, doors that didn't open, faces that disappeared from the morning roll call. The badge Ford flashed wasn't just metal, it was a sentence. The whole country realized what happens when you laugh at the wrong man. Officers went home and couldn't look their own families in the eye. Kids pulled up the TikTok clips, saying, "How stupid can you be?" The news didn't need to sensationalize. The facts were damning enough. Law schools made the case mandatory study. Political careers ended overnight. Funding dried up, contracts got canceled, corporate sponsors vanished. Everyone who once thought they were untouchable was suddenly staring into a future where silence was the only safe answer. Even in the deepest federal basements, the message echoed. There are some people you just don't cross, and sometimes, silence is the most powerful verdict there is. I guess if you want to know the real punchline, it's this: Elijah Ford didn't need to win. He didn't need applause or revenge. He just had to let everyone reveal who they really were. Because justice, in the end, isn't about the loudest voice or the sharpest argument. Sometimes, it's just about who's left standing when the laughter dies out, and the truth is all that's left. So, what do you think? Was Ford right to stay silent? Was justice really served? Or did the system just eat itself alive, finally choking on its own arrogance? I'm not here to answer that for you. But if you ask me, maybe next time, we should pay more attention to the ones who aren't saying anything at all. Maybe the real test of justice isn't what you say, but what you reveal when you think nobody's watching. Yeah, that happened. And I'll never forget the way it felt, seeing the world turn inside out in one breathless, unforgettable morning. If you made it this far, I want to know, what would you have done if you were in that room? Share your take. Argue it out. Tell me where you think justice failed or finally showed up. Let's be honest. Sometimes the biggest lesson comes when the whole world is forced to sit in silence, just long enough to actually hear itself.